Want your agenda and manifesto to reach your voters effectively? At KBC, we have the most comprehensive and credible online platform that has profiles of all prospective candidates. Log on to www.kbc.co.ke/2022 aspirants and let Kenyans know more about you, your past achievements, your manifesto, and your development agenda once you get elected to office. What's more, the website is easy to navigate. We will create your profile, post pictures and short videos with your campaign messages at affordable hosting fees. Log on to www.kbc.co.ke/2022 aspirants today and establish your brand authority as we lead towards the forthcoming general elections.
The legendary run to Olympia Stadion in Berlin is now less crowded, with only 4 teams out of 64 still in contention. Something more outstanding is that all of the sides to have won the DFB Pokal over the last 29 years are already out this year.
And Leverkusen are knocked out by a Bundesliga 2 side.
In the first DFB Pokal semi-final, Hamburger SV will face Freiburg on Tuesday, the 19th of April 2022 at 9:45 p.m. While in the second semi-final, RB Leipzig will lock horns with Union Berlin on Wednesday, the 20th April 2022 at 9:45 p.m. Having braced the turbulent journey and buoyed up with the trophy in sight, no team want to go down without a fight. You don't want to miss this adventurous football show, live and exclusive on KBC Channel 1. KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
Stop using your son as an excuse. Don't expect me to cover for you and deceive others. That's not gonna happen.
If the accusation is confirmed, the president will be the first one accountable. You've brought all of this upon yourself. It's no one else's fault. You deserve all of this. Sign the agreement now.
I must destroy Jack's life completely to avenge the baby I lost.
Wise Windsors. Phone in your purse.
It is indeed the 12th day of April 2022. Good morning. This is KBC News Check and thanks for making time. Of course, here at News Check, we endeavor to ensure that you are kept afloat with all the latest happening in the country soon as they appear or as soon as they happen. Thank you so much for making time. My name is Bentro Njue, and our sign language interpreter for this show will be Susan Thoku. We have 2 hours. In the first hour, we are going to be looking at matters politics, or the politics of the day. And talking of politics, a lot is happening in the country, despite the several challenges that we have, including the drought situation, the battered economy, the effects of COVID-19, and the politics and the campaigns that are in the country. So we have a very interesting first hour, and in the second hour, it's based on what happened yesterday. Professor George Magoha yesterday announced that all the 1.2 million candidates who sat for the Kenya Certificate of Primary Education and released the results 2 weeks ago are all going to be placed in secondary schools, and the process has already started. Some schools experiencing a lot of interest, but we will be talking about that a little bit later. And as always, all the latest happening, we are following up also on the nomination. We'll be getting our reporter Achola Simon from Busia with the latest update on the ODM nominations. We also have a very own JJ Kyoria, who is following up on the Kenya Kwanza. They are supposed to be holding a presser any moment from now, and we'll be heading there as soon as they do so. Of course, there are other events happening around the clock, and you can be kept afloat by visiting our social media platform. That said, let's delve straight into our first conversation. A lot has happened in politics, and joining me now in studio on my immediate left, he is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. Glad to have him because he is going to help us understand some of the politics in coalitions and others. He is also a lecturer at the local universities. We have a law lecturer in our universities here, and also a UDA analyst. You will tell us all about an analyst. We've had a strategist, now we have an analyst, an UDA analyst. So he will be telling us more about that. And joining me on my extreme left, karibu sana, is Alex Kindake Malova, who is a politician, and he will also help us put things into perspective when you talk about politics here in the Kenya. Gentlemen, karibuni sana.
Asante.
First things first, what we're expecting the Deputy President, William Ruto, to have a presser. And one of the key things we expect him to address is the issue of National Assembly Speaker Justin Muturi, who decided to show his presidential ambitions, or we will wait and see how that pans out. But he decided to join Kenya Kwanza. Gibson, you're an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. The Speaker of the National Assembly, the third in command in the country, should be a symbol of neutrality or impartiality, but we've seen how he has decided to take sides. What does the law say to begin with?
Asante sana. Thank you, Troy, for inviting me to this show. And I want to say hi to Kenyans wherever they are. To start with your question, you have put it correctly. He's the third in line in terms of power hierarchy in this country. And then the other aspect is that there is the office he holds and what it portends to Kenyans. That is also something we need to look into. Now, we are informed that he has joined Kenya Kwanza, which is a move he's making. I think what has compelled him to do that is because of interests. Interest is the time to secure your interest. First, before he was a speaker, he was a politician, and he can't stick to being speaker throughout and lose his livelihood in future in terms of providing for his family and whatever needs he might be having. So he needs to have a stand. He needs to have a stand, and Kenya Kwanza seems to be the ground which is hosting him, because I suspect in Azimio the ground is full. The ground is full, and he chose that Kenya Kwanza is somewhere where he has to lodge, and he has been accepted. I don't see any problem with that, because if we start now pointing fingers, who hasn't gone against the interest of the public? Everyone else is joining sides. You can't sit back and do it and say you were waiting for things to happen. Nobody's going to help you out with anything.
But Gibson, we're talking about the National Assembly Speaker. The Parliament is still in session, and we have a couple of months before it's dissolved. Is he going to be biased, or he can show bias? And actually there have been calls for him to resign, even from his party, one of the oldest parties we have in the country, that is DP.
At least you are saying that the time is ripe. The time is ripe for people to declare interest. What I understand about Muturi was a politician and comes from a region. You see, recently was inaugurated as the leader of DP. And he has to give direction. He has to give directions. Speaker or not speaker, he has to give direction. As to the issue of bias, that is a discussion we can have. It's neither here nor there, because where we are as a country, political-wise, somebody has got to declare a stand, and that's where he's coming from, and he needs to stand with something which he believes is going to secure the interest, his party interest, and his family interest, and the region where he comes from. So I think that is what he looked at and said, means say that I resign or not resign. Even if you tell me to resign now, I'm good.
Okay, let me bring in Alex Kindake. You are a member of one of the oldest parties in the country, that is Ford Kenya, and Ford Kenya being part of Kenya Kwanza. And now we would say you have fortified the coalition by bringing in the DP party leader and the Speaker of the National Assembly, Justin Muturi. With all fairness, isn't this something that can be interpreted that he will be now biased? He has taken sides. He should have waited at least until Parliament is dissolved so that he may decide to make such kind of move. A lot of Kenyans and leaders have talked about him resigning so that even from the party itself, the DP leadership wants him to resign because they say he did that behind their backs.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this show. My name is Kidaki Alex Malova, and one thing that I want to tell you is that, as my brother just said, politics is all about interest. You have seen the president already declaring that he's going to support Azimio. And I think, and the president is the commander-in-chief.
Yes.
If he had decided to take side, then when you talk about our speaker, he has all the right also to decide and to declare, because he also has followers. He's a politician.
Yes.
And he has followers. And I think what is happening here is that one thing that you should know, the deputy president is a very smart politician. He's somebody that who knows what he's doing. And he wants to make sure that he has the best team. Because right now, as we are speaking, is all about either you are in Azimio or you are in Kenya Kwanza. That is all. So what is happening now is all about the strategy that you are going to use. Because the good thing about 2022 election, I think, is going to be the most peaceful election that you have never had before. That is what I can tell you.
Back to you, Gibson. You said you're also a UDA analyst. What exactly is a UDA analyst?
Just to tell you is the fact that I've looked at there is what is called the bottom up, which is still making people look so confused. It's been having people talk a lot. So what a UDA analyst does is to actually analyze what is beyond the name. What is beyond the name. And that is what is a UDA analyst, because that is the philosophy of UDA. Other than that, there is what these political formations which we are trying to have in place. And so far so good. I think there hasn't been a lot of noise from the UDA side. That is because UDA seems to have their act together. Azimio, I'm not so sure, because you can actually see them jumping up. Others are in, they want out. They're in the morning, the evening, they're saying we want out. You know, that's not a kind of system which you can be able to trust and believe that once they take power, things are going to be normal. Because if they don't have the act right now, if they're not acting right now, I highly doubt that even if they take power, and the worst thing that can befall this country is having a system which is not organized. We have had a lot of problems with that. We need to get done with that. We need to have people who can be able to sit down and agree and forge the way forward.
Okay, Kindaki, we're going to, before I bring you in, let's first of all hear the reactions of Jubilee Party Secretary General Jeremiah Kioni on the move that the Speaker of the National Assembly, Justin Bidan Muturi, took by joining Kenya Kwanza.
Who believes in himself, and a person who is would want to be genuine to Kenyans would quickly put in a resignation letter. To see him betraying the president at this hour, even when the writing is on the wall, I don't see any other form of dishonesty that we can go beyond that. Since 1963, this is the bunge that has performed the worst. And UNDA, this thing of wheelbarrow, was formed from the floor of the house since 1963. This is the bunge that has performed the worst. And UNDA, this thing of wheelbarrow, was formed from the floor of the house.
Alex, you
Yes.
will be vying for a political seat, right?
Yes.
Kindly tell Kenyans which political seat you will be vying for, because in his words, this is the worst parliament that has been there. And with all fairness, he has some right to say that. Looking at Kenya, we don't have fuel at the moment. The government is putting a brave face, saying that we have enough fuel. We've paid all people, but yesterday I was stuck in traffic for hours until some minutes past midnight. And Jeremiah Kioni is saying that this is a parliament that has not been able even to defend Kenyans or shield Kenyans. What is your say on that?
Okay, first I want to say that I'm going to run for as a member of Parliament Sabatia. And one thing that I can say, as from whatever that he's saying, he might be right. Because what has been happening, there have been a lot of interest. Because there's a way that the president and the deputy president, especially during this second time, they have not been working together. And normally when such people fight, the person who suffers is the common mwananchi. Because you see, when it comes to the kind of development that we have seen in the country, the president claimed that he is responsible for everything that have been taking place. But when it comes to the downfall, nobody's taking responsibility. That's the problem that we are having. And if you look at the deputy president is a very smart guy. For him, he has been working on how to become the next president. And the president has been working on his legacy. But on one way or the other, the president has betrayed the deputy president by bringing in the prime minister. But the prime minister has all the right. You know, in politics you also have to be very smart. But one thing that I can tell you is that the next government, I'm not sure whether it's going to be Azimio or Kenya Kwanza, but I see Kenya Kwanza forming the next government. Because you see, when it comes to politics, you have to be smart, because what the deputy president has done, he has outsmarted them. That's why you see in Azimio they're a bit confused, because they thought that UDA will come along. And if you look at some of the members of UDA, they needed some sober people like Mheshimiwa Wetangula, Mheshimiwa Musalia Mudavadi. The reason why the deputy president brought in Mheshimiwa Mudavadi and Wetangula is not because of the votes. He needed some maturity in his government. And that's why you see he had decided to go for Speaker. And Speaker is a very smart guy and is somebody who is very resourceful to the next level. That's why you see the Azimio people are complaining, because they really needed this guy. He's a very smart guy. I know that's a very resourceful guy for the Kenya Kwanza coalition. And the way things look is like to determine who's going to take over from President Uhuru Kenyatta is going to be very difficult, because the deputy president has already outsmarted them. Because what the deputy president has done, he has even killed the ambition of some of the people who are supposed to run 2027. Because after Mheshimiwa Raila, who is the biggest competitor of the deputy president, the next biggest competitor for the deputy president 2027 could have been Musalia Mudavadi. But you see, the deputy president, he has already bring in the Musalia Mudavadi and to make sure that he controls.
But with all fairness, we've seen political game of political chairs always playing out, because looking at there's a time the DP and the Honorable Prime Minister Raila Odinga were buddies, even were in the same party. We've seen we didn't expect Uhuru and Raila to shake hands. Kenyans didn't expect that. So 2022 is quite far. But talking about killing those political ambitions, then it's killing political ambitions for so many people. This year,
true.
Musalia Mudavadi will not be vying as a president, let's be very honest.
For 2 terms.
Yes.
Yes.
And also JB, the speaker, will not be vying.
Yes, for 2 terms.
His presidential dream and all what he had described and all his supporters now know that he has to now settle for the short end of the stick, because now he has joined Kenya Kwanza, and we know very well he will not vie now, and even his political party is wants to eject him because he's saying he should resign, he shouldn't be our party leader, he went behind our back, and now he has ascribed to Kenya Kwanza, which we were not involved.
Yeah, you see, by the end of the day, I think that was the only option that was available, because speaker going for president, that is next to impossible. You don't have you don't have the numbers. There's the issue of numbers and resources.
Okay.
Our deputy president has the resources, and he's ready to spend. That's one thing that you should know. He has the resources and is ready to spend. If you look at Right Honorable Raila Odinga, he has the resources, but he don't want to spend. That's why you see the president is coming in to, that is what is happening.
But he's not here. At least unfortunately, we don't have an Azimio like Moja presidential or aspirant here, at least to kind of defend him. But away from that, perhaps we can look at the discord in parties. In Kenya Kwanza, we also have the same. Small parties are talking about being bulldozed by the bigger parties. It's the same problem in Azimio, to be fair. So, as an advocate, what would you advise? Because it seems like the big party are pushing out the small parties. We've seen Maendeleo Chap talking about now we need, and even Wiper leader talking about we need to relook at the fine print, what we signed, talking about there's some amendments that being made behind our backs, and the same problem in your coalition. To be fair, how can we minimize that? And bearing in mind that we have the nominations, which are going to put a split. We've seen it's already happening.
Troy, thank you. Now, as Kenyans, I think these are very interesting times we are living in. Because this has, in the previous, it has happened, but in different context. But this time is when we are seeing it raw. And I think from where I see, it's a good thing. Because we are trying to shape the political future of a nation. So come 2027, we wouldn't be having these problems, because we'll have walked through them. We are trying to walk through our challenges, and that is a very good thing as a people, and defining our political landscape, which is also a very good thing. Now, as to the intrigues, of course intrigues have to be there. You know, politics is like a family. In a family, if you can have a family where there are no chaos, there are no squabbles, there are no kids fighting for the remote, there are no kids jumping up, then there would be fun.
Yes.
There wouldn't be any fun in that.
So it's quite healthy.
It's quite healthy, so that we have this, and then as the electorate, we are also able to gauge who stands for what. So if we are able to know who stands for what, then we are able to make an informed choice. Once we make an informed choice, then we will have a better country. Because honestly, everybody is fighting for a better country. It's good for the electorate, it's good for the country. But at the end of the day, also what we need to look at from the legal perspective is, I think we need now to put in the ramification. We need to put in the strategies to ensure that we avoid this. This is going to play to the aspect of now, once the new parliament is formed, we should be able to enact laws to avoid these issues. You remember last time we had a lot of problems also. That is where we have this particular dispensation. The political parties, the Election Act was amended to give IBC mandate to give timelines which are very clear, and that's, I think, what is making people, because they were kind of caught unawares. And also, you know, you are told jump into a coalition. This coalition, you have very few days to formalize it. There's no enough time. There's the distrust. You're not sure which one you should go for exactly. So that is, I think, what is causing all this problem. But on the other side, you try to look at the kind of these small parties. Are they small parties or small individuals? Because parties are more or less individuals. Because Tell me a party which is not associated with a particular individual who is a politician. So we are trying to massage the egos of these particular individuals. And as a country, that's what we need to walk away from by forming this coalition, so that we have grand parties which can actually be able to have the face of Kenya. And there's the aspect of what Mheshimiwa incoming said, that you know, the political ambitions of some people has been killed. I think it's for the good. These guys were not actually, they were not actually serious fellas. They were not serious fellas, because, I mean, I don't want to mention names, but I mean, if you can quickly abandon your ambition and then join someone else, it means you didn't have any ambition in the first place.
Yes.
There was something which was putting them there, so that they start now moonlighting as they want to go for presidential. Talk of Muturi, talk of Mudavadi, talk of Wetangula. I mean, you are synonymous with the quote of whether the fifth. You know, the way even the photo which is portrayed, you clearly see that, I mean, this guy is not ready for presidency. So the only other thing was to join a formidable coalition to take care of his
hold the thoughts. We need to cross over to the ICT authority, who are holding a summit agenda from actually they started it yesterday, which is going to culminate into the summit agenda till the 14th of April, and they are currently in session. Let's first of all listen in, then we're going to come back.
Which has disrupted the fintech sector, not only in Kenya, but globally, and in effect enhanced financial inclusivity across the country and the region. Kenya also plays a pivotal role in hosting several multinational technology companies that have employed many of our young people. An example is the Microsoft Africa Development Center, which was recently launched by His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta, which has employed over 431 Kenyan software engineers. Indeed, echoing the sentiments of their president, Mr. Brad Smith, who made an official visit to Kenya last week. Kenya has a unique and robust ICT talent base that is unlike any other developing country across the globe. This is courtesy of the robust ecosystem through the 2019 ICT policy, amongst other legislations that form this futuristic view of our country. Distinguished guests, the government of Kenya has taken a lead, and I note with pride the integration of ICT into the public service delivery. Since the installation of the first mainframe in Kenya in 1967, we're now talking of expanding our 5G coverage. Citizens can now access government services through the eCitizen platform, where we have over 300 services already digitized, or through the 52 Huduma centers that are spread out across the country. These two were offshoots of the master plan originated from previous Connected forums. The digital literacy program is another outcome of the Connected Kenya Summit that is jointly implemented by my ministry in collaboration with the Ministry of Education, Industry, and Ministry of Energy. And this program continues to transform our education sector by making digital literacy universally accessible to our young learners from the onset. The digital literacy program, that is, the government has installed more than 1 million devices to over 22,000 primary schools or public primary schools across the country. Plans are underway to implement phase 2 of the program, targeting upper primary and connectivity to all schools with reliable internet services. Our aspiration as a country is to implement all these ICT initiatives as we draw near to the global commitments as codified in various instruments, such as the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, Africa Agenda 2063, our Vision 2030, and even our Constitution of Kenya 2010. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated utilization of technology globally, and most nations recognize the strategic importance of ICT as an enabler of economic development. The government of Kenya has not been left behind in developing plans meant to accelerate digital transformation of the country. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Through my ministry, we have managed to develop a 10-year national digital master plan of 2022 to 2032 to guide the country forward on ICT developments and investments. This master plan will officially be launched during this 11th Connected Summit. This master plan will outline a structured roadmap on the delivery of ICT infrastructure and services, as well as the development of ICT skills. It will also provide guidance on investment priorities to both local and external investors. I urge all delegates to spend the next 3 days here in Diani to share their insights on the ideas, on the various ways in which ICT can accelerate the country's national development agenda. Yesterday, I'm informed that 2 high-level forums, one on women in ICT or women in tech, and the other being the county forum, were held. Through deliberate forums such as this, we can continue to shape the national dialogue towards the desired ICT-centric future that will not only attract investment, but also entice our citizens to appreciate the relevance of ICT technology as a critical infrastructure. Just as the ongoing road expansion and construction aims to enhance transport, easing congestion, and opening up remote areas for habitation and investment, ICT infrastructure enhances connectivity and drives our country more towards a equitable distribution of broadband across the country, ultimately connecting Kenya to the rest of the world. During the next 3 days, you will engage in panel discussions on digital infrastructure, digital services, digital skills, cybersecurity, and emerging technologies, all topical issues during this period. The National Digital Master Plan, which will be launched, will guide in shaping our discussions towards a transformed digital Kenya, where technology plays a pivotal role in economic development. The master plan has identified 19 flagship projects which the government will focus on to accelerate digital transformation of the country. Distinguished guests, amongst the flagship projects highlighted are: 1, the reduction of digital divide to spur economic growth of rural areas. The master plan proposes to deploy over 100,000 kilometers of fiber optic infrastructure to 40,000 schools and other learning institutions, 20,000 government institutions, 13,000 health facilities, 25,000 hotspots to support youth and innovators in establishment of over 1,450 wards digital innovation hubs. To enable the one-stop shop for all government core services, the master plan proposes to accelerate automation and digitization for all government core services in both national and county governments. And this will start with the digitization of over 5 billion government records. The third is to accelerate growth of e-commerce initiatives, and the master plan is proposing implementation of the National Physical Addressing System and the National Spatial Data Infrastructure to promote the growth of e-commerce and private enterprise, and this is in the master plan. The fourth is to create job opportunities for the youth and spur local manufacturing and growth of SMEs. The master plan proposes establishment of 2 software factories and another 2 electronic manufacturing factories that will service Kenya and the region. It is estimated that these 2 factories will hire over 10,000 software engineers, amongst others. To enable the citizens and public servants to effectively utilize technology in their businesses and to work, the master plan proposes digital literacy capacity building for all citizens, starting with 20 million citizens, training of 300,000 public servants, and building adequate technical support through training of 10,000 ICT professionals. 6, to position the country as a regional ICT hub, the master plan proposes establishment of regional ICT smart hubs, as well as regional submarine cable maintenance depots. 7, to address the country's e-waste challenges, the master plan proposes e-waste management program which gives strategic focus on e-waste production and handling and disposal. 8, to promote cloud services and data management for the country. The master plan proposes accelerated implementation of Konza Technopolis and data protection legislations. 9, to promote local investors, entrepreneurs, and businesses. The master plan proposes harmonization of legislation to enable growth of ICT businesses, in addition to hosting annual international ICT expos for entrepreneurs to showcase on their products and services. And 10, finally, to mobilize adequate resources for successful implementation of the flagship projects. The master plan proposes enactment of the e-government legislation, in addition to structured partnerships with private sector and development partners. So as I conclude, ladies and gentlemen, I have no doubt that with successful implementation of the identified programs and projects in the master plan, this country will live up to its reputation as a Silicon Savannah on the matters of ICT and economic development. As I sweep my eyes across the room, I'm encouraged to see thought leaders who can complement our government's efforts to nurture homegrown solutions to the challenges facing our region. It's important to note that this master plan has been done with public participation, with your consultation, but we're still very keen to hear from you, because this sector moves very fast, and therefore new things could still come up, and we need to find ways of encouraging them. And as I say that, I see the Postmaster General, who's, I think, still struggling with the poster, and hopefully, if you have any ideas to share with Mr. Kagwe, the PMG, I think that also would be very useful. So I wish to thank in a special way the board and management and staff of the ICT Authority, who have, for the past few months, worked tirelessly to put this summit together. The great turnout shows indeed that the sector was hungry for the revival of this forum, because it provides an excellent environment for the knowledge exchange and networking. I also wish to thank all the sponsors in their various capacities for your overwhelming support. We can only soar higher together, for our ultimate goal is to make ICT technology work for the common good of our citizens and the Africa continent at large. I wish you all fruitful discussions, and if you want to discuss elections, I will be available to give any guidance that you may require. And with that, I am now pleased to declare this 11th edition of Connected Summit officially opened. God bless you all.
Yeah, well, there you have it. The Connected Summit is officially launched by the ICT Cabinet Secretary, Joe Musheru. And in a quick one, a lot of good things that he's talked about, and touching on actually young people, talking about the software factory, which will come in handy for our youths, and also hotspots in counties to improve connectivity. He has talked about some of the successes that the digitization exercise by the government have been, including the e-citizen, which has over 300 services, also the Huduma Center. They talked about the phase 2 of the digital literacy program to be launched, and talking about ICT as an enabler of so many sectors. And lastly, he has talked about he's ready to even talk about the election, because we know very well that we will be relying heavily on technology when it comes to the polls. And talking about technology, Alex, you can dive in with this. The nomination exercise yesterday. I remember the Busia nominations.
Yes.
It so happened that the Kim's kits, some were not working.
Yeah.
Some were brought in midday. Basically, there has been a shambolic exercise altogether, and a lot of dissatisfied Kenyans and aspirants. How do we tame discord when it comes to the nomination exercise? And a good example is a lot of people are objecting to the consensus. A good example is here in Nairobi, women rep Millie Omanga, some Omanga. They're talking about, no, we needed to go to the ballot. Let's not dish them out. What do you believe as a Ford Kenya staunch supporter?
Let me tell you something. One thing that you should also understand is that Kenyans, especially youth, they are very smart, especially when it comes to technology. Those guys who have gone to Kenyatta University and they have done IT, they can hack any bank. They can hack any system. That is one thing that you should know. And if you visit a country like Korea, you realize they employ those good hackers in the system to make sure that they protect the system. But in Kenya, when you talk about using that system in our election, definitely there'll be a lot of rigging. And that's why you see the last election, we had a lot of rigging. I prefer even doing things the manual way than using the technology. Technology is good because technology will save time, it's efficient, it has a lot of benefit. But for you to be able to use that kind of technology, you have to make sure that everything you put in place, there's protection, there's security, everything's okay. That's why you see they are talking about these. Those are very good things that can help our people get employment. But now, the biggest problem with our people is now how to implement. Lack of exposure. Look at a country like China. If you go to China, they know how to use technology. With the technology, you don't need capital. Look at Alibaba. People can be able to set up shops without stock, without investing. But in Kenya, if you look at the people that we front, those politicians, they talk a lot, but they have nothing. They don't know anything. They don't know how to do it. They'll just talk about bullfighting, whatever. But if you tell them how it's done, they don't know. Because those are not the things that will help the common mwananchi.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that we train our youth. Our youth have gone to school. We have those who are skilled and unskilled. These are people who can make money while sitting at home. They can make use of their phones. You can just set up your shop without stock and start selling stuff instead of them idling there at home. But you see, the challenge that we are having when you talk about technology, we are launching very good ideas that should help our people. If you go, there's a time I was in Dubai and I attended a certain seminar and they were saying Kenya, when it comes to technology, they were saying the people who are giving them problem when it comes to hacking those banks are Kenyans. They are very smart. But if we can be able to use that kind of skill, that kind of knowledge, so that they can be able to help our people. Because our youth have gone to school, they have nothing to do, and they end up doing those crimes. So one thing that I can tell you, the idea is good. But now it's going to depend how we are going to implement it.
Okay, and still on okay, perhaps away from the technology bit, the nominations. In both camps, the Kenya Kwanza and Azimio, there are disgruntled members who are talking about just don't hand over the nomination certificates.
No, that's
Let's
normal.
go to the ballot.
That is
What's
normal.
your take on
In
this?
politics, I can tell you one thing. If you go to ODM Nyanza, they'll have a problem because they have so many strong candidates. If you go to UDA, right now, if you visit Eldoret, you'll find, I was in Eldoret yesterday, so many posters, so many strong candidates. And those guys, they are really spending heavily. You'll see Dr. Ruto's photo everywhere. They have strong candidates. If you go to even Central, UDA is really doing very well, and Jubilee. But I think UDA is leading. So one thing that I can tell you, this is, you see, for me, I strongly believe that I'm going to be the next member of parliament for Sabatia. That is what I believe, 100%. If it's like, if somebody comes and tell me that my opponent has won, the thing is, I'll say that I've been rigged. This is Kenya. That is how we do it. Yes.
And if they decide, because you actually, it is the same constituency where ANC party leader hails from, right? And there are ANC and Ford Kenya, you are both in Kenya Kwanza. What if they decide to do a consensus? Will you accept it, or you want to go to the ballot?
Let me tell you, in politics, there are two things, especially the party leader, what they do. They first of all give the first priority to the people who are very loyal to the party. That is very important. That is what you see, like ODM, that is what they are doing. Because you see, there are those people that you are sure that I can give you an example of somebody like Dr. Kidero. Dr. Kidero is somebody, given the ODM ticket, definitely will win. But that guy will win, then after election, he will jump to another party. So those are some of the things that the party leaders are trying to avoid. They know very well that if I give this person a ticket, he will win. But after election, then number two, you know, we're in the same camp with UDA, isn't it? But we're also very careful because they are very smart and dangerous. Just
the
want
same
to be
coalition?
Yes, the same coalition.
Yes.
But we have to be very smart.
Distrust.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because what will happen, we need people who will fight for Mheshimiwa Musalia Mudavadi and Mheshimiwa Wetangula. Because we cannot just bring coward there, because these guys, you see the way they are talking, you just heard from him saying, you just heard.
And it's a good thing that you've brought about that, because the first thing you talked about, there's a lot of discord in parties, because Party A does not believe, Party B does not trust Party C, and then Party D wants something that Party A doesn't want Party D to do. And we have the same discord in Kenya Kwanza, as you've heard from your colleague there. The political parties dispute tribunal will be quite busy, if you ask me. Quite busy. You're an advocate of the High Court. And the nominations, as we have started seeing them, they're going to bring about so many petitions and people jumping ship. How do we tame the discord in parties when it comes to nominations that are currently underway?
The only way we can be able to tame, if at all we can, is by first ensuring that there is consensus. There's nothing which can beat consensus. And that's what I think UDA is trying to do, or the Kenya Kwanza coalition is trying to do. I'm surprised that my friend is actually pointing fingers already.
It's a good thing, that's why I've directed.
I wonder if he was in Azmio, what he would be talking about. We are trying to have our act together here, but still, of course, there will always be cheaters, distrust, and such like. That is healthier, and that's what I said earlier, that this is good for the country, because we're able to know to what limit can Troy go. To secure his interests, so that we know where to place him.
Yes.
Yes, if he doesn't speak or doesn't come out that strongly, we wouldn't be able to. He will just be quiet. We give him whatever we tell him, well, stop running, and then later we hear he has problems. And that is what we don't want. It's better we have problems now rather than have them later. Yes, so this is the best time to have them. Though the time is limited, we'll have to work with the time that there is. You've talked of the political parties tribunal, a very interesting thing. So what I'm anticipating is, because is a situation whereby the political parties tribunal will have to work overnight to deal with some of these challenges. Because if they're not sorted now, at the end of the day, somebody will need to be appeased by a fair tribunal, and that would be the political parties tribunal. So because, I mean, you just talked about, it was in Eldoret the other day, you walk around the country, you will see people have invested. People have invested. A friend of mine invested and colored the whole town red with the Azimio thing, but he lost the nominations. And the guy is now, I don't know, I've tried to call him, I can't reach him. You see, it's painful. But then, what do? It's not about you. It's about a bigger goal. That's where, as the Kenya Kwanza, we are trying to ensure that if you come in, have you come in? What do you expect? Let's sit down and agree. Because you're not the only one. We have several people here. So that we try to minimize these things of going to court, of trying to create distrust, people negotiating through the press. Somebody has signed an agreement, is again busy out there saying, I don't think I'm comfortable, so that he can try to have some leverage, which is not okay. If we come to our side, we just have to sit down and agree and find a way forward.
Let's pick up the pace now. Looking at NCIC, and Kenya Kwanza was objected to the fact that NCIC did release a number of words that you cannot use during political gatherings, like Sipangwingwi and Utajua Hujui. As a coalition, don't you think this is watering down what NCIC is trying to do? Yes, of course, it has been called the toothless dog, but we don't need to rub it in to the point that your coalition leader, even actually a day after that, he has a song on the same words that have been have been red flagged.
I think what is happening, if you
we
look...
need to strengthen NCIC, don't you think?
Yeah, because you see what is happening. I think if you look at the government, the government is supporting Azimio. That one I can tell you for sure. And Kenya Kwanza is very aggressive. It has young and sharp people who can take this country to the next level. And what they are trying to do, they are trying to make sure that they control, especially the youth. That is what Kenya Kwanza are doing. Because they understand the problem that the youth are going through. So what Kenya Kwanza is doing is making sure that first of all, for you to be able to bring all these youth together, you must speak their language. So that is what the government is trying to do. The government wants to make sure that youth don't follow the Kenya Kwanza. That's what whatever that is happening is, or the war is against the Kenya Kwanza.
But of course, if the shoe was on the other leg, you would be saying the same thing. But looking at the structure like an institution like NCIC, they've been told that, yes, they don't have the prosecution powers, but we need to strengthen it so that we may avert some of the things that we've seen in a previous election in 2017, in 2007, and just keep recurring if we go back to previous years. Perhaps, Wakil, you can chip in with that.
I think, in all fairness, I did mention about NCIC in the last show last Tuesday, because from where I sit, NCIC is a pack of cowards who don't know what they're doing.
But it's a government
It is a government institution, but I think it does not have the right people at the top, because we need to see more from them. But these side shows of them trying to come up with some list of names. You see, even the aspect of gazetting those names didn't follow the law. If I show up with a story, I can assure you, if I show up with a petition at Milimani High Court tomorrow, that move will be thrown away and they'll be back to the drawing board. So it's kind of, they're jumping, they don't know what they're doing.
But with all fairness, all the words that the NCIC talked about were not directed to a certain coalition. It's all the politicians, including you and me, we decide to be politicians.
It's not about that. It's not about that. It's the intention behind it. Because in law, we look at the intention, the mischief. What is the mischief behind it? These guys are trying to twist you through one hand and tell you now you can proceed. It's a fair competition. It's not. That is why I tell you, because the other reason I need to tell you why I said that if I show up with a petition in Milimani, I will have to throw whatever action they made out of the window, and I wonder what they will be remaining with, because that's the only thing. I think they want to look relevant, but using the wrong media. And it's because there's no public participation. Our constitution is very big on public participation. Whom did they consult to come up with those things? What is the process they went through to come up with the gazetting of those names that, they are not good names to be used? It's only that what we can actually tell or see is that it's one side which has been using those words, or everyone else is using. The other day we saw what happened with the Azimio leader. He spoke some things which other people had been prosecuted about, and he got off with nothing. He's like, no, that is okay. It seems like my brother said the government is supporting Azimio by all means, and is able even to cover them by using state agencies. And that is very wrong. That is the intention. That's the mischief we don't need to have. Let's have a fair playing field across for everyone. But you cannot legislate to stop someone from aspiring or thinking or trying to achieve his individual or political interest. That's very wrong.
Back to Ford Kenya, Alex, and your party leader had, of course, a long time ago showed interest that he wants to be the next head of state, and now we've joined Kenya Kwanza. We don't know what exactly he's going to get, if at all Kenya Kwanza will be forming the next government. And you're also going head-to-head with a very formidable opponent in Sabatia, which is one of actually the constituency of ANC party leader. Care to comment on that?
I think in Kenya Kwanza, when you look at ANC and Ford Kenya, we are brothers. We don't fight. So the only thing that I can tell you, when you talk about our party leader, Mheshimiwa Wetangula, yes, he had a vision of becoming the next president of this country. You know, Mheshimiwa Wetangula is somebody who is very learned. He has gone to school. He has all that it takes. He has experience. He has exposure. But for the sake of this country, he decided that he wants to support Mheshimiwa William Ruto because from his word, he said that comparing Mheshimiwa William Ruto and Honorable Raila Odinga, he feels that Honorable William Ruto, our Deputy President, is honest. He's somebody who keeps his word. And that's why we decided, and you see, as a party, we always follow the direction of our party leader. So he told us that what we are going to do, we are going to support Kenya Kwanza. And that is what we are doing. So the only thing that we are doing right now, we also want to make sure that the manifesto that we had and their manifesto we come together, we come up with something that will help, because they don't understand the problems that people of Western Kenya are going through. You know, there we are farmers, people are struggling, there's lack of employment. So what we want to do, we want to come together, we reason together, we come up with something that can help Kenyans.
And still on Sabatia, if at all they decide, as a coalition decide, we will consensus to perhaps grant the ANC.
No, when it comes to consensus, it's not about ANC or a party. It's about a leader who can take us, our people, to the next level. It's not about...
You want to oust the current sitting MP. Why is that?
No, the current MP is a very good friend of mine, Honorable Goi. You know, before I was going for the governor, and we had an agreement as between Ford Kenya and ANC. We agreed I go for Sabata seat, and then my current MP is going for governor. That was an agreement, and I think because of the age and experience, I agreed on that because it's something that I sacrifice. But definitely I assured my people, who will be picked, whether our guy or somebody from Azimia, because by the end of the day, it's all about our people. I'm going to support who will come in because of the kind of experience I have and the kind of exposure. I've worked in a number of countries. So I decided who will be picked as the new governor, we will work together.
How do you want to change the constituency?
Not the constitution. What happened? I was going for governor seat. So I decided to change. I came to the member of parliament, Sabata. So that is what happened. So then I went back to my people, I explained to them, and they agreed.
Okay.
Yes.
So for now is the MP, but you still hold the ambitions of being a governor?
I still hold the ambition, because what I decided, because whatever that I was doing for the people.
Okay.
So what I decided to do is that I decided that I will share all the idea and all the contact that I had to who will be picked. It's just like what we are doing with UDA. You know, Ford Kenya, ANC, they had their own ideas. If you look at someone like Musalia Mudavadi is somebody who has a lot of experience when it comes to finance, and is a very smart guy. I'm sure the reason why the deputy president went to Musalia Mudavadi is not because of votes. It's because of the experience and what he has. Even Mheshimiwa Wetangula. And that's the same thing that he has done to the speaker. He's a very smart guy. That's why I told you we have to make sure that we're also very careful. We don't just rush because the deal is good.
Okay.
Yes.
And Gibson, looking at the running mate factor, it has caused jitters in both coalitions, including your own Kenya Kwanza. And it is threatening the core foundation of these coalitions. And how is it supposed to change, or how will it change the political landscape, and especially after these nominations?
For our side, speaking for our side, I think we don't expect to have so much problems because it's very clear whoever came in knows how he came in. So it will still be a consensus thing. You see the way the Kenya Kwanza solved the issue of Nairobi, solved the issue in Kakamega. That is the same way that the Dr. Ruto is going to actually pick his running mate. But then we need to also be smart about it. He's talked of our side being smart, which I totally agree, because you cannot claim to be smart when you don't do smart things. So we're trying to minimize all the hula balloons, people jumping up, and ensuring that we actually have sober-headed people who are able to work towards winning, not
you guys
fighting
work
for
closely with the deputy president. Have you perhaps had a conversation on who will be the running mate, or still holding your cards close to your chest?
I don't think we are allowed to speak that.
Okay, I thought it was a leading question. Yes.
I think what is happening, the biggest problem is always with the supporters, not even with principals. I think the principals, they have already agreed. But now you can see what our brothers from Mount Kenya are doing. They are preparing their people, whether we get the deputy president or not. The most important thing is all about whatever that we are going to do to our people. Even Mheshimiwa Musalia Mudavadi, that is what he's doing. It's not about the position. It's about what I'm going to do for you guys. That is what you're doing. So with that's the most important thing. Yeah, you just have to make sure that you communicate to people.
All right, and because of the interest of time, let's touch something that is affecting all Kenyans, looking at the battered economy, looking at the fuel shortage. Of course, the Ukraine war is not making things any better. We are just from quite something that nobody ever imagined, the COVID-19 pandemic. And now we have the drought situation and politics as well. As we wrap up.
Troy, that you have really touched where I really wanted to talk about. You see, as a country, much as we are talking politics, we also need to deal with the current situation the way it is. And before we got on set, you remember we were talking about how nobody is speaking to the fuel crisis.
Yes.
Fuel crisis is everything. Fuel is everything. I mean, if you touch fuel, you have touched every household. You have touched every family. And everybody is affected. And the fact that our members of parliament actually cannot actually raise a question about that, it's really appalling from my side. And what I want to say is that we need to look and be more focused about what affects Mwananchi. What I'm seeing right now is the aspect of people, of course, trying to coalesce and be able to form the next government. But of course, there is an immediate problem, which is eating our people in the northeastern. People are dying, cows are dying. And these people, we may not have people to vote if we don't deal with the situation right now. You compound it with the fuel crisis, it's going to be problems. You may not have our people to lead. So I think I'm calling upon the leaders, please, let's ensure
the situation,
immediately despite the politics.
Yes, as you end up.
Yeah, I think I agree with my colleague here. One thing that you should know, with fuel, it controls the price of each and every commodity. Right now, the price of everything has gone high. People are suffering. Even moving goods from Nairobi to other regions is difficult. So I think what should happen right now, I think the president should first of all concentrate on this issue. That is the most important thing. Because even there are some people who are taking advantage. I was in Sabatia yesterday. There are people who are selling fuel at 250, 350
and even sometimes at the roadside.
Yes, that is what is happening. And you see, most of our youth...
You even wonder where they got it.
Yeah, most of our youth, you see, they depend on this border thing. Now they are jobless. And you see that one can even end up even them going to this issue about crime, whatever. So what we need to do, the president and the deputy president, they should first of all address this. This is more important than even the election. And I think, we don't know, you see some people are suspecting maybe there's somebody who's trying to sabotage the government or whatever. These are the issues that we have to address first. Yes.
Indeed, thank you so much. That has been Alex Kindaki, and as you can see, he's quite dressed. He is a Ford Kenya member, and he will be vying for the Saboti constituency member of parliament. Sabatia.
That's the homeland of Mheshimiwa Musalia Mudavadi,
where the ANC party leader hails from. And of course, we had Gibson Gisore, who is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and also a lecturer in our local university. He's also a UDA analyst. We are trying to put things into perspective when it comes to the political landscape that we have in the country, not to mention nominations that are currently underway in various parts of this country. Thank you so much for watching, but don't go away. As I had told you earlier, is that in the second hour, we are looking at the Form 1 placement, and we have a scientist, Dr. Mark Garunga, who will be joining me on set to discuss that matter. Thank you so much for watching. Let's take a quick break, then we'll be right back.
Ili kupata Warumi 8 kama skiza tune kwenye simu yako, bonyeza *811 *815#.
Nina hakika kwamba hakuna kinachoweza kukutenga na upendo wa Mwenyezi Mungu. Si kifo, si malaika, si vitu tulivyokuwa navyo au tutakavyokuwa navyo, si mamlaka au chochote kitakachoumbwa. Warumi 8:38 hadi 39.
Kupata Warumi 8, bonyeza *811 *815#. *811 *815#.
Niache mimi na familia yangu tafadhali. Sitawahi kukusamehe mpaka kufa kwangu.
Dadako hata tuacha tuishi kwa amani.
Unawezaje kwenda kumuwafaza wakati wafaza ndo tegemea alilonalolio peke yake?
Kwa kama ushatemwa usileteza ovu mimi hapa.
I give you a good lawyer akuwakilishe. What's the problem? Mimi nitashinda vipi kesi wakili kama wewe utatoa ushahidi?
Ipo siku wakili utarudi ndani ya hii nyumba na hautanipata.
I can no longer keep his secret.
But what does that mean? What are you talking about, Santiago?
I'm talking about my father's mismanagement. I promise that I'll do something about Rogelio. I won't let you down this time.
Because I'm planning to transfer all of my interests in this company to someone else. Name is Mariela Salvatierra.
Ardo's mistress?
Yes.
Then let me see it.
Lying heart.
Stop using your son as an excuse. Don't expect me to cover for you and deceive others. That's not gonna happen.
If the accusation is confirmed, the president will be the first one accountable. You've brought all of this upon yourself. It's no one else's fault. You deserve all of this. Sign the agreement now.
I must destroy Jack's life completely to avenge the baby I lost.
Wise Windsors. Phone in your purse.
Stop using your son as an excuse. Don't expect me to cover for you and deceive others. That's not gonna happen.
If the accusation is confirmed, the president will be the first one accountable. You've brought all of this upon yourself. It's no one else's fault. You deserve all of this. Sign the agreement now.
I must destroy Jack's life completely to avenge the baby I lost.
Wise Windsors. Phone in your purse.
Welcome back, and just in case you joined us, this is KBC News Check, and on this hour we are talking about matters education, and to be more specific, we are looking at the Form 1 placement or admission, if you like. Yesterday, Professor George Magoha, the Education CS, talked about 1.2 all the candidates who sat for the KCP examination, and the results were announced 2 weeks ago, are all going to be placed in secondary school. Well, that's some good news, but he later said that he's receiving so many calls. Oh, my kid has not gone to the school that I wanted, or that the school that my kid deserves. And it's more or less something that recurs each and every year. And to help me discuss that further in length, I am joined by two education experts. And first and foremost, let me introduce Irene Kamau. She is the CEO of Kasarani Group of Schools. And on my extreme left, we have Dr. Mark Matunga. He is not a new face here. He has really helped us when you talk about matters education. He is also the president and CEO of Africa Center for Advanced Technology, right?
Yes.
And you're also a scientist.
Yes.
Thank you so much for making time.
Yes.
Perhaps we'll start with you, Madam Irene. What do you make of the placement? Remember, the good CS talked about all the 1.2 million, apart from the inmates and those of our age, have been placed in a secondary school. But as soon as he did that, a lot of people complained. A child from Turkana is taken to a school in Mombasa. A child in Mombasa is placed in a school in Garissa. And it's always the same thing each and every year.
Yeah, thank you first and foremost for having me. I appreciate the efforts of the government in placing the learners. We are happy that the children have all been placed. The 100% transition policy seems to be working very well about the placement. But then you see the reason why the CS would be getting these calls is because there are some schools, and he mentioned it, that are high preferential schools, highly preferred by parents.
And okay, allow me to just interject.
Yes.
To give that picture, because we have that story, and even the schools that a lot of candidates did prefer. Let's first of all hear what the good CS had to say regarding the 2022 Form 1 students who will be joining secondary schools next month.
Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha says the Form 1 selection process was based on merit, choice and equity. The remarks appearing to provide comfort to students who failed to receive call-ups to schools of their choice.
In the placement, the majority of candidates who scored 400 marks and above were placed in national or extra-county schools of their choice. Special needs candidates were also placed in regular schools of their preference, while others were placed in special schools or based on their disability categories, merit and choice.
Nanyuki High School appeared to be the most desired center of excellence, with 156,003 students applying for Form 1 slots, despite the school having the capacity to admit a paltry 480 students. 149,087 students had picked Kabianga High School, though the school can only accommodate 528 learners in Form 1. Pangani Girls capped the top 3 positions of the most desired schools, attracting 118 and 73 applications against the 336 slots available.
We have still refused to be reasonable. Just like everybody wants to go to Kenya High School, Alliance and Pangani, in advising their children, they still also advise the children to make exactly the same mistake. And that is going to be a matter that the education field officers, together with the teachers, must take action upon, together with the parents.
But in the end, the government believes it has done everything to ensure all learners transit to secondary school. The Ministry of Education has placed 38,797 candidates in national schools, another 2,045 in special needs education, 214,960 others in extra-county schools, 218,456 more in county schools, and 726,311 others will join sub-county schools, while another 9,128 are refugees in camps. Professor Magoha announced that the government will be offering 9,000 scholarships to needy students.
Like I've said, bursaries and scholarships should be given only for those children in boarding schools. In very simple English, the government of the Republic of Kenya pays for school fees for every child in a day secondary school. So if you are going to give so much money to a child in a day secondary school, some of that money may end up in your own pocket. So we are going to advise that you give scholarship to only children who are going to boarding schools.
Over 1.2 million candidates who sat for their 2021 KCPE examinations will have a chance to continue with their secondary school education in national, extra-county, county and sub-county schools, even as the government continues to assure
Yes, and that is exactly what transpired yesterday at the KICD when Professor George Magoha did announce how the placement for the students will be. And Irene, you had already started talking about, we've seen the other schools, the Kapsabet, the Pangani Girls, the Kabianga, being preferred or being the choice of many students. Yes.
Yes, that preferential situation with the parents. For example, even Nanyuki High School with a preferred of 164,000 people, but only having a capacity of 400. If you look at the capacity for Pangani Girls, the same story. This means, therefore, that you're likely to get a lot of learners and their parents who didn't get their preferred school. But that's not because they didn't qualify for it, but because they can only take so many. And where now for us as the private schools, we offer an option where the child can be able to be placed in private schools that are equally good and meet the standards. Out of the number of schools that I've seen on the list that were awarded new learners, I didn't see the private school category. It was highly missing. I don't know what that means, but we do have some good private schools where the parents can be able to place the children. The issue of affordability to those private schools, in my own thinking, is that most of the parents that have been able to put their children through private primary schools can equally afford to put their children in a private public secondary school. But for one reason or the other, we didn't see children receive letters, and even if they did from the private sector, they also received another one from a public school. For example, a child would receive a letter from Kabarak High School and also receive another one from now a government school. So we had that kind of a conflict at the private sector as Kenya Private Schools Association. That is something that we are still thinking about and wondering how to mitigate, because with a 100% transition, the learners are all of them transitioning into the government public schools. I don't know where that leaves our private schools, but
it's a good thing you brought the private schools, but I have a question a little bit later on how the government can work with the private sector to try and mitigate what parents say it's a deal that they didn't sign up for, and they expect their kids in certain schools, so the private sector can chip in, working closely with the government, and you will tell us how you would want that done, because you're actually in a private school. But let me bring in a Doc here. Doc, what do you make of the Form 1 selection? Bearing in mind that we had to have 100% transition, and he talked about there are a number of issues to look at, equity, the performance of the student as well.
Troy, I I don't know if you want me to tell you the truth or
Yes,
just
please.
to just go along with the
truth
with the story of 100% transition. First of all, let me thank Professor Magoa for what is viewed as 100% transition in terms of placement. That is not a difficult thing to do, to be honest. I don't think that I should come here to actually say that, hey, you know what, it is great in Kenya, we have achieved 100% transition, but that's just placement. You have this number of students. I can write for you a computer program that would place those students in less than 5 minutes in all the schools. Okay. That is an easy thing to do. The most difficult thing is, one, are they going to actually attend those schools? I mean, a good number of them are going to go to private schools. Another good number are going to actually go to polytechnics or village polytechnics. And some of them, yes, will go to some of these other schools. But I think the issue that we really want to address, I know Prof has spoken about equity, choice, and what else? He said the third thing.
Performance of the student.
Performance. That is where the problem is. Because really, while I laud the Ministry of Education for having achieved 100% transition, there's still a bigger problem. And I think this is what we should come in with the new reforms in education. I'm talking as somebody from a marginalized community, from Suba. I come from Fangano Island, where the environment of learning is completely different from a student who is learning in Nairobi. And then when you come and say that, okay, fine, I performed poorly, but again because of the environment, and so I miss the points to actually go to a national school. The point that I want to make here with the reforms in education is to improve the standards in all the schools. And this classification of national schools, county schools, whatever sub-county schools, ward schools, is also a big problem because it brings the stigma of if you're not in a national school, then you're in a county school or a sub-county school. It sort of like condemns you to that environment. If you look at my grades in high school, they're not the greatest grades. If you look at the schools that I went to Mauta Primary School on Fangano Island, then I went to Kodaro Bara Secondary School. But that didn't stop me from going all the way to the US to study and being one of the leading IT brains in this country. But if I was just left, in fact, I didn't even attain A minus or B or whatever. But I believe that I have the potential. And if you look at some of the things that I've done in this country, including initiating digital content development in this country and a host of other things that I've done in this country in the IT sector, if I was just left that you've attended these marks, you've gone to a sub-county school or you've gone to a county school, it then condemns you. If you're a C student, it condemns you. What Magoa needs to do in standardizing education, and I think he's been on a good track, he needs to actually, we need to move away from this grading and these classifications, because that is what is now going to encourage a host of other students to actually attain. I mean, there are people, if you look at Professor Magoa's office, there's a gentleman there called Professor Ogur, who was not necessarily an A student, but the guy rose through the ranks through TVET until now he's actually a professor. I mean, look at the likes of Professor Karega Mutai, who basically was a P1 school teacher and rose all the way to become a professor. So what needs to happen really is normalization of situations, conditions, and environment in all of these schools. One last point that I want to make on this, and I know I'm throwing you off a little bit, but when you talk of private schools and public schools, there's a huge difference. I mean, in this country, we don't even recognize that. If our private schools can be the way they are and preferred for a lot of parents, why can't the public schools actually rise to that level? Before, those schools used to be very good schools. I mean, some of us just went to those public schools. So if the government can actually put investment in improving and normalizing and standardizing the education environment. It'll be a lot easier. We'll not be celebrating 100% transition. And I want to make my last point on with regard to what Joe said earlier. When we are talking of a student on Fongano Island and a student at Nairobi School. What basically standardizes that is partly in the century we live in today is technology. Because on your smartphone, you receive the same content here in Nairobi as the same child or the same person in Beta or in Samburu. Technology will help actually standardize some of this so that we are not segregating and we are not discouraging students who would otherwise do well. That means that I would not be rushing to go to Alliance High School because I get the same content, I get the same quality education on a platform that is same everywhere. I mean, Joe was talking of 1.2 million devices that were sent to schools. Most of those devices are actually just sitting in those
devices
schools.
Because of course, infrastructure, power.
Yes, I mean, so government needs to be a little bit more serious. I don't think that I want to sit on this set and celebrate 100% transition.
Yes, and Irene, it's a good thing that, Doc, you've touched a lot of things that we will be able to look at a little bit keenly. And Doc, you've said a good thing that sometimes a kid will feel so unwanted, so you done well, you wanted to go to a certain school, you have already achieved the marks that you should, and you're taken to Samburu, to Turkana, to anywhere. Even you demoralize the student or even the parent.
Yes.
That can affect a child's performance, which we haven't had even the good CS talking about, or any stakeholder talk about what happens or how a kid is affected when he or she is not taken to the school of choice, and he or she knows well she did perform well, and taken to a school that even the parents themselves didn't even imagine their kid would be taken to.
Tragically so. My thinking is that as a consumer of the policies of the government at the local level, at the grassroots level, we are more in touch with these children on a daily basis. And so when I speak, I think I speak for the number of school head teachers and directors who deal with learners on a one-to-one basis. When policy is made at the high levels, rarely do they look at the actual impact on the ground. You see, by placing a child to the person sitting with the statistics, it's a plus. And a very big one, because they have been able to place, like the good doctor said here, placing all these people is a big plus. What they haven't said is the effect of that, even psychologically, to the child. For example, at our school, we had children that were called into schools that they never even knew existed. And so the head teacher, I kid you not, the head teacher had a hard time yesterday explaining to the parents, that's a very good school, that's a very good school. So you see, there's also a level of ignorance at the grassroots level with the parents on the placement. Similarly, I look at it in this manner. As we are placing the children into these schools, are we looking at how it will affect them even socially? I know about the formative action where we endeavor as a country to have the face of the country in a school, where you get one child from Northeastern in a particular county, another one from the top child in that school gets to enter into a certain school, so that you're able to look like we are balancing. But then the child has to be uprooted out of a certain geographical region and to travel to that place so that they can be able to get an education. So what happens if the parents cannot be able to make the child go there for one reason or the other? They will opt out. When they opt out, that's when you have the second selection. Okay, which happens naturally, because not everybody called to Alliance will show up, because someone was called to Alliance and they are somewhere in Northeastern. By the time that mama is thinking my child is going to Alliance somewhere in Kikuyu, they are not sure even how to get there. So the position becomes vacant and they have to fill it. Now, psychologically, several things happens to the child. It baffles me how we make policies completely unaware of the impact it would have on the consumer of the policy that we are making. For example, the 100 transition that that is celebrated, which I started by saying it is good, it was achieved, has on the other hand seen very few learners going into private sector. So we are killing the private secondary schools. So good private secondary schools would find themselves grappling and struggling to fill capacity. We have over 120,000 Form 1 places in the private sector in good schools, the Strathmores, the Riara, Thika Road Christian schools. There are many. St. Catherine's in Machakos, there are many. But none of those children got an invitation letter to those schools. So what's going to happen is that though we are supposed to be helping or partnering with the government in the provision of education in this nation, you find that the private schools will end up shutting down, one way or the other, eventually. I'm looking at policy that has been made in another country that has somehow closed down the private sector. And I'm looking at Rwanda very, very closely. When the 100% transition came, I traveled to Rwanda just to see how policy can actually close down an entire industry. And you find that the private schools are no more. There is not a private school in Rwanda, maybe one or two, but it has been dealt very heavily by policy. What does that mean? Does it mean that the private schools are not able to up their game, or is it that I don't quite get it? But we on the grassroots, both the parent, the child, and the school are wondering exactly how is this going to work for us. Yes, we know the government has the positions to take in the children. There's also something else which we call the heart of the person, the heart of the republic. The future of the republic is in the souls, the children that we are placing. They could be, you can call them numbers when someone is sitting down to analyze, but they are future of the republic. When we transition all the children to secondary schools with capitation, including the one with whatever marks, all of them, then I don't know where we are placing the tertiary institutions. Like, I don't know what we are saying to our learners. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. What exactly are we teaching our pupils, our learners, our children? When they are doing this examination, mark you brought for us an examination and guns to guard that examination. But then even if they get 100 and 80 and 40, they transition. I'm finding mixed signals here. What's the purpose of guarding that examination that heavily? If all of us will go to high school, you'd better just let the teachers mark. I'm sorry.
Yes, it's a good point that Mark, you brought about that. Yes, indeed, it's 100% transition, but we cannot celebrate and say yes, this is the 100% transition that we want. The private sector has been kept aside for now, as Irene has talked about, and the government has a lot of challenges. We just can't accept 100%. It can be 100% that is quite 100%, and is 100% just 100%. You just transit to the next level. And there are other technological and infrastructural challenges that the country is and the education sector is facing, but they have not been addressed. Case in point, you've talked about technology. A child in Fangano will have the same technology as a child here in Nairobi. They'll get the same information, but they have different working or even learning environment.
Let me correct our English here a little bit. It is not 100% transition. It is 100% placement. It is taking names randomly, whichever formula they use, and placing them in those institutions. That doesn't mean that this young man or young girl from Fangano Island, Mauta village, will go to Samburu. That is why I'm cautious in an attempt to actually celebrate this, what we call 100% transition. If anybody at the ministry use the language of 100% transition, that's misleading. It is 100% placement. of all the students, looking at the spaces that are available and placing them there. But Troy, I'm notorious about setting my own questions and answering them. There's a bigger problem that we're going to face in the next few weeks. A much bigger problem. And that is the problem of transition to grade 6, which is junior secondary.
Yes.
And the reason I'm saying that right now at this point, because we've been talking of transition, all the issues that we have been basically articulated by Madame here. But here, when you're talking of a class 6 child being taken to a building or a classroom that has been built in a secondary school that's about 10 kilometers away, how are you going to deal with that? Because you're not taking them there to actually even board. I am telling you this as somebody who is sitting in a perfect situation in what is going to be a perfect storm. That ties back to issues of policy. When you come up with policy of transition or policy of placement, then what are you actually doing? Because, thought has to go into some of this. The practicality of all of these things actually have to come to play. I am a parent who once fought hard for my child to go to Alliance Girls High School, only for her to actually drop out at Form 3. She did not proceed. What did I do? I had to actually bring her out and basically put her on a technology platform. She's now second year at USIU. Okay. But that is me, somebody who is capable, who is able.
Yes.
What will happen to a parent who is not capable and is not even able to actually provide transport? I know, yes, we're providing school fees.
Yes.
But what about transport to the school? And what about school supplies that this child needs to... So before we get to celebrating 100% placement, we just need to actually look at the dynamics of what we have just done. I know the president says all the students must move to the next level, which brings me to actually emphasize on a misnomer. Why do we place, or why do we station 250,000 policemen with guns to guard an exam? The country stops, everything stops for that period of time. And we spend a lot of money. And these exams are actually set and printed in the UK. Yet, by the way, we print our money in Kenya, but we print our exams in the ballot. So what's more valuable? And then we come and say 100% transition or placement. And this is what's happening in the developed world as well. They have standardized, not actually even standardized, but district level or class assessments that basically allows you to actually go to the next level. And I am not saying, we are trying to also come up with what we call national integration and all of that kind of stuff. Yet we failed to take Nywele teachers to, I don't know whether that's hate speech, Nywele teachers to Northeastern.
Yes.
We failed to actually take them there. And we want to take children there. We want to take Nywele children there. And I'm not being a...
It's a good thing because
so let's deal with issues. Let's be
especially
practical.
in Northeastern Province.
Yes.
If at all, the former Northeastern Province,
yes.
the teachers, they said, we are not going back.
We're not going,
But at the end of the day, the government places the students
exactly
in that, and that brings in the private sector. Let's look at how the private sector can chip in, because we've had cases where deserving students fail to take up positions that they should in national schools, for example, or the county schools as they are called now. But looking at the private sector, a lot of students, thousands, are going to be joining private schools, and they will leave the opportunities that they were supposed to join public schools. Are we sure that we're going to get the equity and the fairness the government talks about in placing the deserving students in those schools? And what can the private sector do to ensure that they also bridge the gap? Because a lot of students will not go to the schools of their choice.
Okay, before I answer that, and thank you for that question, but I wanted to respond to something that the good doctor has talked about or mentioned about the grade 6 transition. I want to echo what he has said. That actually is a time bomb waiting to explode. One, if we insist on 100% transition or placement, as we have agreed to call it, then it means that all the learners in our grade 6 will have to be placed into those schools where they have no probably idea that they are supposed to go outside their region. Remember, the baby is still a kid. At class 6, is still a child. And I'm going to be placing this child in a junior secondary that is either in this primary school or in the secondary school. If it is in the primary school, that's okay because the child is still within the age mates of the others. But if it is in the secondary school, we have a serious challenge waiting to happen. Big age gap between the child coming into junior secondary and the one clearing Form 4, they are wide apart. Big disparity. Yes. What will this child be taught by the one who is in Form 4? If we don't put it into understanding, and that's why I started by saying, please, we are not numbers, we are people. Children are children. If we are handled as numbers, then we will backfire completely. Let's look at it as people. The placement of our children in those schools, and they decide not to go now to the alliance, coming to your question, and they will come into our schools. We appreciate we have the capacity, and we can be able as private schools to take in these children and educate them. In the past, the performance has been good even at the private sector level. But the worry would be, as we continue that 100% placement, so to speak, if we do that in grade 6, we do that in Form 4, we do that all along, there is a bottleneck waiting for us right at the top in the entry to the university, waiting for us, because this is a child that from the word go has gotten the notion, I don't have to work very hard, I can get through, I can sail through. But then there is a one who has been working very hard. So I don't know what it's bringing up, and I don't know exactly where we are going to. Although we have said we will get them to select different sections when they get to Form 1 to year 10, 11, and 12, they will be selecting which stream they are going into. But notice, right from the word go, teaching is not only what I talk to you about. There is also what I don't say, which sometimes can constitute more learning than what I said. Our learners are watching and hearing us making policies that are affecting their lives directly. I get to the end of Form 4, or senior secondary at that time, and I want to tell you that I'll take you to college to do X, Y, Z. You see, I have not formatted you to that way. So I don't know how we are going to make it, but I believe the government has a situation analysis, and they are able to see how they will mitigate this one, so that when we come to that, we are able to. This Form 1 selection is only mirroring what is awaiting in the class 6 selection into grade 6 to grade 7, and then grade 9 into grade going on to junior secondary, to senior secondary. That what we are doing here should be looked at as a precursor of what is going to be happening even in the other levels, because it's not only about this particular class 8. No, this year we are going to be having 3 candidate classes in our schools. We have a class 6 is a candidate class, we have a class 8 is a candidate class, and we also have a Form 4 is a candidate class. So this year the NEC officials will be coming to our schools 3 times. So we're going to be having this placement exercise for 3 categories of pupils. What are we doing with them even in this particular one when we only have 1 class? That is what I would say, that it is important to look at that policy a little bit more keenly, understanding that we teach values at tender age. We teach thought process, ability to think and ability to place yourselves. These are the people that will graduate and become our politicians. These are people that will graduate and become our doctors. Yet we have told them, actually, it's a responsibility of us to ensure that they just go. We just want you to go to the next level. We just want you to go. How you go is even my worry. I'll worry how you go. And once you go, I'll even worry how you survive. And then I'll worry how you go the next one. And then I want that doctor to put me on a table during, and I'm sick and this person is supposed to perform surgery on me. I don't know what kind of...
Doc, perhaps you can touch on that. She's brought about a very interesting point on the policies that we have, and we can't just assume that it's 100% transition, even on the placement now, from from grade 5 to 6 to junior secondary to senior secondary, and the list just keeps going on. And as a country, we have a knack of plunging head first, and then we see what happens. And now we're talking about our kids. As you respond to that, you can also, the CS talked about using affirmative action to ensure that students in arid and semi-arid regions receive their right and their share fare of national schools and the county schools.
So, Troy, so that we're not accused of government bashing.
Yes.
And I don't want Magoa to actually call me and say, Mark Matunga, this guy, what is he doing? And of course, my friend and PS, Joan. I think they've done a good job in many areas. You know, you remember since Magoa was the chair of NEC, he brought some bit of sanity into examination management, has tried to get rid of cartels in, not all of them, but tried to get rid of cartels in the education sector. Brought some bit of order in the, but with that, he I think has also used that opportunity for good reason, good intentions, but also to actually push certain things that might not be practical. And you know what you're saying, that you know in Kenya we like to go into the deep end, so and then you're told to sink or swim, and then you have to actually figure out. But remember, as Madam said, we're dealing with human beings. And we're dealing with human beings who we're supposed to be nurturing to actually be positive contributors to our society in health, in education, in engineering, and all of these areas. And so it's something that actually we need to actually deal with a lot of care. I'm sitting here. As of yesterday, I've received quite a number of transcripts that I need to take to Magoa and the team from parents who want their children to be moved from this school to the other.
Yes.
Last year I declined to actually support anyone. I have not made a decision that I'm going to actually help anyone in this sort of transition. But even as we deal with that, one thing that we have to appreciate that Magoa did on the platform of equity is to help students from marginalized areas to actually to access, you know, institutions that they would otherwise not access. I appreciated the fact that there are students from the slums that were transitioned or that were placed in quote unquote better schools. That is a good gesture. That is definitely a good gesture. That's why I'm saying I don't want us to just sit here and say we are a government bashers.
Yes.
We give credit to where it's due and basically ask for a bit more caution where they are going the wrong way. You know, Madam has talked of 3 transitions. You know, earlier on you had guests here who are talking about their own transition, and that is political transition as well. So we actually have 4 major transitions this year. You can call it 5 because we're also transitioning from Corona.
Yes.
So we're dealing with a lot of issues. So imagine what the students would also be dealing with, and remember this period of time. April or May to December is going to be crushed for all these students, some of them in the new environment, class 6 in the new environment, Form 1s in the new environment and all of that. And you miss a small section or a small point or a small time period in a child's life, you may damage that child forever.
That is
I can tell you that for my daughter, when she said that I'm not going back to Alliance, that is third term, I had to actually sit, we sat down as a family and listened to her. Why is it that you don't want to go back to Alliance?
It was a big disappointment as a father.
I mean, who doesn't want your child to be an Alliance? I mean, I was all over on Facebook talking about my daughter at Alliance. And then here she is saying, Dad, Mom, siblings, I'm not going back to Alliance.
And it's just 1 year.
So close to finishing. And so for us, hey, just finish. But I think had we not listened to this child, had we just basically gone with our pride, hey, you are at Alliance, I'm a father with a daughter at Alliance, we put on our Facebook, we have visited our daughter at Alliance. I mean, when you're talking to your peers, hey, my daughter is at Alliance, who doesn't want that? But I'm one person who basically stepped back. Had we not listened to her, we would have lost her. Not that she would have died, but she would have even drifted into depression, because it's about listening to that child. And I think that's what Madam is saying, that, let us also listen to the practitioners, those who are with this, from a policy point of view. Before you actually come up with a policy and say 100% transition, class 6, junior secondary, we're building it in a secondary school. But then what's going to happen to the schools that don't have secondary schools nearby, that don't have the junior classroom that has been, the model classroom that has been built? Like, I'll give you an example. Let me give you an example in my home area. On Fangano Island, we have about 30 primary schools in an area of about 60 square kilometers. That's the size of the island. And then the classrooms that have been built are 7. That is class 6, the junior secondary, and they've been built in secondary schools. So then think of what is going to happen to a class 6 child who actually is in a primary school that doesn't have any secondary next to it, because we have about 8 secondary schools that are actually scattered, and this child is about 10 kilometers away. What's going to happen? I mean, she's talk of the age gap, but who's going to be teaching this child in the secondary school where the classroom is? Are we going to actually extract the teacher who was teaching them in that primary school to walk with them every day 10 kilometers to that school? I know there are teething problems, but that is what calls on dialogue with the practitioners. And that is what the ministry need to do, and that is what Magoa needs to do. I know he's a straightforward guy. He's a one-dimensional guy. Once he's decided he's going to this direction, that's okay. But I think there needs to be a bit more dialogue in some of these.
And still on what Doc had mentioned, and the CS also mentioned the same thing on students from humble backgrounds.
Yes.
Talked about bursaries and sponsorship. And warned, actually, 2 weeks ago when he was releasing the results, he warned all those people who want to use bursary for other intended purposes or to give to people who do not deserve the bursaries. Perhaps you can touch on that. I know you come from a private schools background, but I'm quite sure also in those schools you do sponsor students, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I also want to start by applauding you see the placement that we're talking about 100% transition, and we are talking about it in it comes out like it's a bashing, but there's a beautiful side to it. Last year I was still here on the set for the same things, Form 1 selection, and I remember what we were discussing that time was children who had committed suicide because of performance. This year,
the pressure. Yes,
exactly.
Yes.
This year, you can see children have hope. I'll be blessed. Nobody has to die because they can't go to Form 1.
Yes.
And that to me, and that's why I said policy affects the people right there down in very dynamic ways, real actual tangible effects of policy, that there was hope. Second thing that happened, in as much as we have talked about the guarding of the exam, is that there were the cheating cases. There were attempts here and there.
Yes.
But this year, if you listened carefully, it's not something that our CS had to sit there and tell us about the number of schools that were cheating. This thing went down because even the need to cheat has equally been dealt with by the understanding that everyone has hope to go somewhere. But that's an effect.
Yes.
And we have to appreciate that effect as well, and then apply the checks and balances. About the bursary, from the private sector point of view, we do get the bursaries. But it's the parent that goes for those bursaries from the relevant offices. There is no situation where they would say this one is in a private school, we won't give bursaries.
Yes.
They do give the bursaries, but they are not that much that they can be able to clear the fees of the children. However, it's in the hands of the politicians as opposed to in the hands of the educators, because you could have the DEO or others. So it is really not anything that we in the private school can make a comment about in terms of bursaries. We do know they are there, but we wonder very much whether that bursary kitty, that bursary fund, really does trickle down with an impact. For example, if your fees is about 15,000 and the bursary gives you 3,000, surely you still won't go to school. Yeah, you won't go to school unless the bursary can be able to fund you fully, because remember, it is for a needy child. The reason why you've classified this child as needy is because you've run a check behind that child to find out can they afford it, and you've discovered they can't. So if you have discovered they cannot, it's only fair, therefore, that if you're going to give bursary, then authorize a full support system for that child. I would rather you support 2 fully than have 20, all of them a little bit, and therefore 20 of them have gotten the money, but 20 of them didn't finish school.
True.
Yeah.
Okay. Because my director informs me that our time is up. You lead an advanced technology institution, and we are leveraging on technology to try and even. How can we try and even the scores for our students so that we may try and bridge that gap, that education gap? As we wind in 1 minute.
I'm joking.
Oh,
sorry.
Apologies for that. Apologies for that.
May I have some water?
Oh, okay. I think we can get some water. Okay. Okay. So, how can we leverage on technology?
Yes.
To ensure that we kind of have a even playing field.
Technology does provide an even playing field. According to me, is that everybody can be able. You see, these days. Everybody can access a smartphone. They are not that inaccessible as before. And then we have a situation where everybody can be able to access Wi-Fi. That we tested during the pandemic. You see, the pandemic also had something good that was coming out of it. The ability for every homestead, a good number of children were able to come online, both from public school and private school. And
perhaps, Doc, you can help.
No, I think she's articulated. Technology is an equalizer. We saw that during the pandemic. It can be done.
Yes.
And
of course, our good CS ICT, John Musharu talked about that and the hotspot and everything.
SchoolNet, connectivity in all of these schools.
Yes.
Let's get money from the exams department and put
Wi-Fi. Because we don't need exams to move. Thank you so much, Doc, for that. Thank you so much. And let me appreciate Brian Waswa, Florian Odari, Bridget Mastergraph, Anthony Zachu, Lilian Kirwa, who was following from Qatar, Freddy Koyalo, and the list keeps going on. Thank you so much for watching. We've been talking about the Form 1 placement, and I had been joined by two education experts. We have Irene Kamau, who is the CEO of Kasarani Group of Schools, and on my immediate left, we had Dr. Mark Matunga, who is an education expert, an ICT guru, an ICT scientist, as well as a leader when it comes to matters technology and education. Thank you so much for creating time. We are now switching the language to Swahili, and we have Tamrini and Kurunzi Mashinani. Thank you so much for watching. Let's continue this conversation on our social media spaces.